Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And it is Friday in the NBA. Pretty big slate here, Nate. 10 games to choose from. We are going to be talking about in this one the C's, the red hot C's, maybe the best team in the league. According to Nate in those power rankings, they are headed to NOLA, taking on the Pellies, about a minus 2.5 point spread there. I'll let Nate get to all that good stuff, but make sure to like and subscribe. We've got this video, another one, and our player props up for you as we do each and every weekday of this regular season. Also want you to head to thelines.com, have our great written content up there for you guys all season long, and our odds finder tool, so you can make sure you're shopping those lines, getting the best value and the best juice on those NBA bets and player props. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 10-game slate and then talk about your Celtics.
Yeah, we got the Heat -1 at Wizards. That's the first game we're going to talk about in our other video there. First game on the slate, some injury news to watch. And then we got Hornets +10 at the Cavs, who are back home after struggling on the road. Bucks are +2 at the Sixers. That's going to be a good one to watch. SGA and the Thunder +6.5 at Memphis, who just got JJJ back. The Magic +9 at Bulls. Pacers -5 at Rockets. Nuggets without Jokic are +8.5 at Dallas. Then we looking at the Celtics here, -3 at the Pelicans. We'll get back to that one in a second. The last two games, Suns -1.5 at Jazz. And then the Pistons, who are beating the Clippers right now, +7 at the Lakers as they stay in LA. Yeah, Celtics open -2. It's creeping up because they've been just blowing doors off people during their 8-game win streak. I actually don't know if that's going to continue in terms of them winning, but at a total of 227, that's only barely started to come up right now. I'd be hitting the over as soon as possible, basically. Malcolm Brogdon's going to be back for the Celtics, pretty much expected to return. That's only going to help their offense. Marcus Smart is questionable with that ankle, and if he's out, that's not going to help their defense. We nailed the under in their last game against Atlanta. Thought Atlanta would hang around and make it a close game in the fourth quarter, which actually probably would have screwed that under. But yeah. They basically got swallowed up. You know, that's the operative word. So Boston's big wings just like gave Trey and DeJounte nothing, but New Orleans is so big and rangy that, I mean, you can't just expect to shut this team down. And they were going under pretty consistently until all of a sudden they caught fire from beyond the arc, and they're back-to-back wins over Memphis and Chicago. But, you know, they go under when they don't have Zion. 4 games this year, their pace is 4 possessions slower without him. They're shooting 6 more threes per game, and they're a poor 3-point shooting team. So that's not necessarily going to translate to a lot of success. So if you get Zion back in there, which I think, you know, he had been resting that foot for a big game like this one, you expect them to compete and to challenge the Celtics down low to get those high percentage looks and not fade away in the fourth like Atlanta did. New Orleans is 3rd in fourth quarter points per game, 5th in points per game overall, 5th in paint points. And you look at their key guys, I mean, they're just so versatile, and they've all had some success against this big Celtics defense. CJ's last 3 against Boston, 27 points per game. Joe Val, his last 3, 19 points, 15 boards. Zion, his last 3, 26 points per game, and New Orleans won all 3 of those. Then they lost 2 without him last season. And Ingram, 24 points per game in his last 3 as well. So I'm confident that they'll come along for the ride, basically. And the Celtics are scoring 124 a game, like we know. I mean, they're just shooting the absolute lights out. New Orleans, I mean, they kind of press you to come inside the arc and do your damage. They're 2nd in opponents' 3-point percentage, but still allowing a lot of attempts. I don't know if there is anybody on the Celtics you can really dare to shoot right now. And they're more than happy to go and give you work in the mid-range game. And Tatum, you know, facing that Pelicans defense, his last 5 against the Pelicans, 34.5 points per game, a 132 offensive rating. And that's before, you know, this kind of revamped MVP Tatum that we're seeing this year, where he's just kind of read all the news stories about him choking in the finals and fed himself green Hulk mush, and now he's just dominating the NBA. So I don't see either offense letting up, basically, is my take for this one, like the over.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about them being a better offensive team, the Pellies, and probably a little bit worse on defense. That's sort of what we came to expect in that first season. That was with Zion being great, and that's kind of what it was like when he's on the floor. Their defensive rating it goes way up. When he's not on, and when he's on the floor, their offensive rating goes way up, and you just expect points. It's just a complete inverse this season. It's a much smaller sample than that first season, where he at least played a bunch more games there. But this season with Zion, their offensive rating is actually 7 points lower. Their defensive rating is 8 points higher. So him not playing, like I said, I don't want to just go ahead and say cause and effect. Like, it's a Friday night. If he's there, there's going to be energy in the building more so. It's going to be stars out hugely. I mean, there's so many big names on both these teams right now. Three solid scorers on both of these squads. Jason Tatum is a top 5 player in the NBA. Like, book it. Jaylen Brown, when he wants to like bully people, get a rebound, and go to the other side, there's not a player that I've seen that can hang with Jaylen Brown when he gets a rebound and goes to the other side of the floor and just bully balls his way to the floor. When he looks like that, I'm like, is he the best player of this team? Like, meanwhile, Jason Tatum. So I'm just very impressed with them. I'm impressed with the way that they beat the Hawks. They kind of won that game in the beginning and middle of the third quarter, and then honestly they still won the fourth quarter and beat the crap out of the Hawks and just kept it going. And we saw them do that when they took over last year. Somewhere right around the All-Star break when they went on that run. Right, it started in like January, and then we were all like, "Wait, this is like the best team in the NBA," and they were winning games by like 30 points, and it was over in the second and third quarter because of the fact that they just stuff it down your throat. And I'm hoping that that's the case, because that's just firepower against firepower now. We're talking about two of the best transition teams in the league. Maybe the Pellies don't play at a super fast pace, but they do play at an incredibly efficient pace, or efficient, offensive way when they're in transition and when they're moving the ball fast. So, I think it's not even really about the pace as much in this one. It is just about the sort of offensive efficiencies for both teams, as we say. And I'm super impressed with what we're seeing from the Pellies right now. It was a super impressive win for the Pellies against the Grizz the other night. I know Desmond Bane was out, but Triple J was back, and you would expect them. Josh still went off, and what's impressive about them is, and what impressed me in that game, was the amount of assists that they had as well. Currently 8th in the amount that they have per game, not turning the ball over, and also CJ's not shooting. CJ McCollum is not shooting well right now, which is huge for them. Trey Murphy is shooting incredibly well, especially over the last 3 or 4 games where he's been making shots like from half court. Like, all of a sudden you have to pick up Trey Murphy from half court, which is wild. But yeah, I mean, if CJ positively regresses from his 40-31 splits, especially that 31% from the field, then at 7 attempts, I think you've got to continue to feel good about the Pellies positively up, like I say, positively progressing, if you will, to the sort of offensive juggernaut that they were last season. So this is all a long-winded way of saying, like, I feel really good no matter what about that Celtics team total, in this one. And if you want to go ahead and hit the total at 227, I'm good with that too. I don't see much that tells me this is a team that you would worry about the Celtics having maybe even somewhat of a letdown game, or maybe a team that just matches up with them well in a way that you'd be worried about it. Like, I don't know that team fully exists right now to be able to stop the Celtics on offense. So I'm going to continue to feel good about their team totals as well.
Right. I mean, I don't think they're going to fall off a cliff suddenly. I mean, the gap between the Celtics and the second place offense right now, the Kings, is the same, is greater than the gap between the Kings and the 11th place offense. So they have a long way to go to become anywhere close to an average offense. And it's really just a question of, is the other team going to be able to keep pace? And not only the Pelicans have a great starting lineup, but you mentioned Trey Murphy, Alvarado, Larry Nance Jr., who, by the way, is the second best offensive rating in the NBA somehow. They have a second unit out there that can keep pace. Now the Celtics have Brogdon. Their second unit's going to be even better. So you're not going to get that letdown that you worry about when you bet an over. If all of a sudden the bench is out there and the game gets ugly. I mean, Peyton Pritchard must be the best fourth string point guard we've seen in a long time. He was lighting it up in the last one. Celtics, after we call it a little bit of regression because on the road they score a little less. They had just struggled shooting the three against OKC. What do? They hit 21 threes at nearly 50% against Atlanta, which, like you said, is a better defensive rating team than the Pels, better guarding the 3-point line this year in terms of attempts. But on the other end, the Celtics gave up 58 paint points to Atlanta. So if you're playing against Zion and you're giving up 50 plus paint points, you still don't have that rim protector. You're going to give up plenty of points, and both these teams have shown the ability to score down the stretch to keep it going that way. But yeah, Miami -1. You obviously are going to feel way more confident if you know Bam Adebayo is going to play. He only has missed one game with a knee contusion, so it's not necessarily something you'd expect him to sit out too long with. And if you happen to bet this before you get official word and then you're sitting with Miami at close to a pick'em, you should feel really good because they just started to take off with Bam leading the charge in their last three. They had won 3 in a row. I mean, the offense was just unbelievable. 120 offensive rating, hitting 13.5 threes at 36%, 40% in those last 3 games. It took an OG Anunoby career night for them to snap that streak, and that was without Bam there to patrol the paint. This is just a match. This is a big brother, little brother matchup, right, in the division. Washington never really has had enough to threaten the Heat. They've lost 4 of their last 5 against Miami. There was a win in there, 103-100 in Washington, mostly because the Heat couldn't score. They're 7 for 27 from 3. KCP was probably the second best player for Washington in that game. Also, Spencer Dinwiddie, big game. That was a different kind of iteration of the Wizards, who are now they're starting to percolate a little bit too. I mean, they had won 4 straight before welcoming Beal back from COVID protocols, and then they lose on a buzzer beater to the white hot SGA. But I mean, none of their big 3, if you will, their mediocre 3, I guess you could say, have a lot of success against Miami at all. Beal in his last 5, 22.5 points, but horrible efficiency, 97 offensive rating. He's a -61 his last 5 against Miami. Kuzma, since joining the Wizards, solid offensive performances, 14.5 points, but 122 defensive rating, -60 on his plus-minus. And then Porzingis, a couple games with Dallas and with New York, 16 points, 102 rating. So I don't really expect them to be able to keep pace, and you can't pack the paint and dare Miami to beat you from deep anymore. Like, that's how their only recipe for success in those recent matchups. And now Max Strus and Gabe Vincent are the walking personification of Miami's incredible farm system, and they're both just providing incredible consistency from the perimeter. Jimmy Butler is playing games. I mean, that's really all you have to say is he's actually out there, and he's not sitting with minor injuries, and he's out there providing winning plays down the stretch. And that makes you feel really confident when you bet on them. I haven't even really mentioned Tyler Hero is out, but that didn't matter. They beat Washington without Hero in one of those recent matchups, and without Bam in one of those recent matchups. So for me, it's just Jimmy Butler-led team, instilling that toughness, Eric Spoelstra coach team, and then 3 guys on the other end that just haven't had much success against that recipe.
Yeah, this one makes me nervous. I smacked the Raptors as soon as Bam was out. Bam, and you need more than what they're able to put out there when they don't have Bam and Tyler Hero. And Hero's obviously on the offensive end, Bam's on the defensive end, but it's really mostly on the defensive end because even when Hero's not in there, you've got Max Strus, who's like gonna get paid after this season if he keeps playing at the rate that he's playing so far this season, which is super well, especially when he actually gets in there and gets minutes, and he keeps coming in and really like demanding time. Like you can't continue to sit him as he's doing all the other things, career high in rebounds and assists as well so far this season. So I don't know. I'm nervous though about Miami on the road as the away team so far this season, 1-4 against the spread there, failing to cover by just a couple points. It's all sort of just like on the fringe. Like I can't see this game being very, very more than a double-digit spread or at the end of it. I do think that this is going to be a close game, as is wont to happen between these teams quite often when they're both at full strength, and that's obviously the key to me is what happens with and without Bam. And their defensive rating a little bit worse. Obviously, points in the paint a little bit easier to come by. You start looking at guys like Zinger and even like Kyle Kuzma's rebound stats, things like that when you see Bam out. So I'm kind of looking for some ways to bet this. I might consider some Strus props here as well. I also like Caleb Martin when Hero's out, as he comes in and definitely plays a lot in the second unit, and then also was actually in crunch time lineups against the Raptors the other night. So with this one, like we're saying here, especially if Beal's playing, he comes back, and it's still like it's not like you were saying in that last game where we were talking about Washington, like Beal coming, or I'm sorry, you were talking about Porzingis's player prop, talking about the Wizards through that lens, saying like still take Porzingis's props, which hit because Beal isn't the same sort of aggressive player that he was when he was playing for a contract that he now has, right? And part of the reason I think we all know he didn't want to leave Washington was he knew that he was going to continue to get paid there and be the man no matter what. And there comes a level of human just sort of like rest on your laurels a little bit once you get that stuff. So with all that in mind, like Kuzma's on an absolute tear, as we know, and is trying to like lead the league in rebounding essentially from his like smallish powerish forward position, depending on which lineup is in there and where you've got Porzingis lined up. But that's really more where I lean in this one. Might consider some points, but I don't feel nearly as comfortable. And if Bam's in there, I want to hit those heat, really is what I'm saying, and the difference that he creates. But if he's not, now I'm starting to look at what I can kind of rely on for player props when I know that Bam and Hero are both out for that team.
Well, I'm trying to forecast that he will play, and if he doesn't, Nikola Jovic is in there at least, and he had a solid start against the Raptors. I mean, look, the Raptors are just a much tougher team to face than the Wizards, right? It's not the same challenge at all. I mean, granted, Washington's starting hot just like they did last year, but you look at some of the numbers. I mean, fourth worst assist to turnover ratio allowed, fourth highest 3-point percentage allowed. They do buckle down in the paint. They stop fast break points and free throws. But Miami, when you talk about those execution numbers, assist to turnover and 3-pointers, that's where Miami's gonna roast you. I mean, those are the numbers that basically say how well do you guard set plays and this kind of sets that Spoelstra runs to get his guys open shots, and they're hitting them right now. I think the offense will be good enough. And that the Wizards offense, which is 25th in points and 3-pointers and 24th in free throw attempts, they can't match that. They got to win ugly, and right now Miami's comfortable playing ugly. They can win a low scoring game as well, but right now they're playing really well offensively. Like I said, that 120 rating, even with Bam out for one of those 4 games. And Washington last year didn't really win too many unexpected games, 21-39 straight up as underdogs since last year. So I think Miami can handle this one.
Nate, go ahead and kick us off with your first prop for tonight.
Yeah, Joel Embiid. I guess you could try to do that one. But, I mean, this is pretty much the worst matchup for anybody because the Bucks are the number 1 defensive rating, and I just don't care. Joel Embiid is so freaking good right now after apparently coming back from the flu and from the plantar fasciitis that made him look kind of sluggish earlier this season. He has just looked like a 7'3" Kobe, and he's just absolutely roasting anybody. Like Brook Lopez has some pretty good defensive numbers against him in the recent meetings, and the Bucks do as well. I don't think it's going to matter. When he can put the ball on the floor like that, there's no way Barolo is going to deal with him. And the Sixers are back home where Embiid this season's averaging 35.8 points per game, a solid 30 since the start of last season over a larger sample size. So that's his prop is 30 points, minus 105. I think you just hit that. I mean, you could go up to 45 PRA if you want. He's also boarding up like crazy, 40 points per game, 11 rebounds per game on a 43 usage rate in his 4 games since coming back from the illness. No James Harden. It's just going to be feed Embiid and get out of the way. And I think there's some business for him to attend to after that stinker against Milwaukee the whole team put up earlier in this season. He tends to play in these MVP showdowns, and right now Giannis is one of those front runners. So I think we'll get a good game from Embiid tonight.
Book it, baby. Yeah, book it. I love when these two teams play each other. And these two just behemoths not even really go at it. They just kind of like go bucket. Like they're two of the strongest, most dominant. Like their game is just you can't stop me. Maybe throw like Jokic in there for just like big body man who can also do the same thing. But yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch. I got a little something on Joker for MVP, which we've talked about in some videos. Also have some on Giannis. Those are really my two guys, and then put my most on some others. But let's keep this campaign going for JoJo as he just it's a great matchup. It's not the Jazz where he just is going to have Markkanen and Olynyk that he can just pound. But like Brolo ain't it either in this one. Sorry, buddy. I love you, Brooke, but this isn't going to be the one. So I'm going to go under. We've gone this route before, Nate, with Mr. Scary Terry under, but I think it's time to hit it again. They're playing the Cavs. And I think there's a little bit of inflation in his points at 20.5, which actually is at minus 105 on DK. As you can tell, they're like giving you some pretty good juice there, as they don't think it's that likely either. 26.5 points and assists. Also, I like adding the assists with Scary Terry, who we know loves to get his more than anything else. But I think the inflation in these stats, these props, and where they're set is they're playing the Cavs, and the Cavs, have had a bit of some offense or some defensive struggles on their recent roadie trip, and that is apparent in the fact that they do have they give up 3 points less at home per 100 possessions. But also just in terms of where they play defense really well right now, it's somewhat surprising the fact that the strength of their defense is around the rim, obviously with their two centers there, and you call Mobley a power forward maybe, but they still are allowing the 7th fewest points per game to point guards, 2nd fewest points per game to shooting guards as well. Wherever you want to put Scary Terry on the floor, the way he's working with LaMelo, also LaMelo being back. Obviously, we talked about that before, the way that his usage goes down, it keeps going down. He had a pretty good usage against Indy, but still, his shooting this season is so bad. He was 7 for 17 in that game. On the season, 39% from the field, 33% from 3, and that actually has been even worse in games this season where he's had to take 20 or more shots, where there's just so many 7, 8 for 20s that you see from this dude right now, that I feel really good about taking under on the points, and even in the assists, as he is going to play a little bit more from the 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Cavs are a lot better than they showed the last couple weeks, and they've been a lot better than they've showed all season defensively. Once they get everybody back, I still think Jarrett Allen will be out, but they're finally getting Donnie and Darius Garland on the floor together for extended minutes, and you got to think that they're going to start locking people up like they were last year. And yeah, Rozier's just an easy target right now with LaMelo out. With LaMelo back, yeah, that usage rate's either going to drop or his efficiency is going to remain poor, like it was in a much better matchup against Indiana when we hit that prop. Look, I wanted to take the Magic +9 at Chicago. I guess it's a little scary because they don't have the rookie of the year front runner right now, Paolo. But with him out, there's an opportunity to take Franz Wagner, who's going to step into more of a facilitating role and more of a scoring role. Last 4 without Paolo, he's averaging 20 points, 5.5 boards, 4 assists. His usage rate has jumped up to 27.5%. And you can get him either 18.5 points. You get 23.5 points assists in this matchup. I like tacking on the assists. I mean, it's just 4 more rebounds for a nice, well-rounded PRA line there. But the Bulls allow the 3rd most assists per game overall, 5th most points and assists to small forwards. They've lost 5 of their last 6. They're starting to look like the Bulls of last year where they can't guard. 127 defensive rating the last 2 games. Still have Caruso, so that scares me off a guy like Jalen Suggs. But the Magic have shown they're willing to use Wagner or Paolo, whoever's out there, as a facilitator in like that high-low kind of set. And so I think that's where you go to attack this Bulls defense. They are hitting the road here after a ridiculously long home stretch, and Franz had some better numbers, so he has better home road splits because they were just home for so long, and that's part of like what we see the juice there. So you look at a larger sample size last season, he averaged a tick more points on the road, and he is getting more assists per game on the road this year. So it's really about opportunity, though. With Paolo out, I think he'll just have the ball in his hands a lot more.
Yeah, he did. He had the ball in his hands a ton against the Timberwolves the other night as well. But yeah, I am still scared of picking that team, especially on the road without Paolo. Wendell Carter going to be great coming back for them. Not going to be enough, I don't think. Although, plenty of revenge narratives there after that recent trade. But let's finish things off here, Nate, with I don't know if we want to call him our guy yet, but he's hit for us plenty in Tyrese Halliburton, Hallababy. You can go over on his PRA, 34.5, minus 115. Those are slightly better odds than his points and assists. I feel most confident about his points and assists. Halliburton diming up the league this year, 10.5 a game, really 11 a game on the season. In his last 10, I bring up his last 10 just because it's obviously the most recent sample, but also it's indicative. He's played 6 of the top teams in terms of the best defensive ratings in the league. 6 of the top 15 best defensive ratings in the league that he's played against in those last 10, and still put up 19, 11 assists and 5 boards, all in 35 minutes a game. Usage rate around 22.5% or so, but they're playing the Rockets, and the Rockets are bad at defense. They're kind of bad in general, but they're very bad on defense, where they're 3rd worst in terms of their defensive rating. They do give up like the 7th most assists to their opponent. They give up the most assists per game to point guards specifically. They also give up like 26 points a game to opposing point guards. So I'm not expecting Jalen Green or KPJ or anyone like that to start playing defense anytime soon for this team. Eric Gordon, whomever you're throwing out there for those guards, just really, not this Eric Gordon anyway. So yeah, I think Tyrese Halliburton to get the 29.5 points and assists on DK is minus 125, because I think they feel pretty good about that happening as well. So I think a 20-10 game for dude is pretty up there as well. And that's why the double-double isn't even as high as you might want it to be for Halliburton, where I believe I saw it a second ago and then I just lost it, but I believe it was only like plus 110 or something like that for him to get the double-double, but still feel good about that because his assist prop is at that 10.5 right now on the same site. So.
Oh, really? Then just hit that double-double if he's expected to get 10 assists.
I know, I got to see where it went.
Yeah, no, it's probably pretty close to even money. But I think that's where you go with the points and assists. I would hesitate to throw in the rebounds, but then I think about the fact that Houston runs and guns and misses a ton of shots, so there probably should be enough opportunities there for him to get some buckets, so some boards as well as those buckets.
Yeah, we're going to keep picking on this team as they, in terms of the Rockets, as soon as we see someone playing them. They just, look, let me give them their flowers. They just beat the Mavs by 9, a Luka-less Mavs team. But they're good for one of those every now and again, right? Like 20 to 25 wins is still going to be the number for this team this season. So that's all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We're coming back to you guys next weekday on Monday. So make sure to continue to follow along with us. And until we see you next, happy betting.